Thanks for coming, everyone. My name's Tim. I'm the Head of Interaction Design at the Government Digital Service in the UK, at GDS. So I'm going to talk about this for the next kind of half hour, and then we'll stop for questions. So running a design system for government, this is something that we've been doing for about a year and a half now. We spent about a year building one, and now we've been running it for a bit. So we thought that maybe this would be an interesting topic. And just a quick question, who here is building or already running a design system? Just so I kind of get a sense. Okay, great. So I don't have answers to some of the problems that I'm going to describe here, but maybe some of you do. So perhaps in the questions we can have a bit more of a discussion about like different ways that we've approached some of these challenges. Would be interesting to know if you are facing the same challenges as well. But hopefully you will get something from this, even if it's just a sense that you're not on your own and you've got the same problems that we have. So before I go into kind of describing the design system and how we've been running it, I'll just talk a little bit about the thing that the design system is for, which is GovUK. So GovUK is the home of all the government information and services in the UK. It's got about 300,000 pages of content and hosts about 700 different services. We say 700, we're not really sure, it depends on your definition of a service. But you can do things like report treasure on GovUK, and you can apply to get a birthday message from the Queen if you so desire. But you can also do more sensible, useful things perhaps, like set up a business and claim asylum in the UK. And so there are 700 plus of these different services in and amongst the 300,000 pages of information. And services on GovUK are usually built and maintained by different departments, so not GDS. Each department is responsible for its own services. For example, the register as a childminder is run by a department called Ofsted, and view or share your driving license is run by a department called the Driver and Vehicle Licensing Agency, DVLA. So whilst it looks like one website, it's actually hundreds of little discrete sites built by at least 25 different departments, and they're all around the country in the UK, and they're all working independently. And that gives us a big challenge, which you'll probably be familiar with yourselves, which is how do we help teams all around the country efficiently design and build usable, accessible services that all look like GovUK. And by look, I kind of mean in the broadest sense, so not just visually, but like work like GovUK, be as accessible as GovUK, be as usable as GovUK. This is the challenge. In the past, before we built the design system, we'd been reliant on a collection of tools that had been created, usually as a kind of pet project from somebody in GDS. They'd had a problem that they were trying to solve themselves, and they built themselves a tool, a framework, a library, and so on. And then they released it out into the world because we like to work in the open, and they kind of took on a life of their own, and they ended up being heavily used by other departments because there was no other alternative. And that was great. That's a really good way to get things started. But each tool grows in a very ad hoc fashion. There's no central coordination, and they tend to only be actively supported when the original developer or designer has time to do that, because everybody's got a day job that they're trying to get on with as well. So consequently, those tools were really confusing to use. There was lots of overlap and inconsistency, and people couldn't always figure out which one to use, and couldn't get help when they needed it. So this diagram is a picture of the old front-end architecture of GovUK, and it shows what you would have to understand if you were a department before you could even start to build something that looked and felt like GovUK. And this is because it kind of grew in an organic ad hoc fashion. So we did some research into the effects of this kind of situation, and unsurprisingly we realized that there was lots of duplication of effort and inconsistent design and real variability in quality. So that was what we were coming from, that was the world we were coming from about 2 years ago. And so we did what a lot of organizations have decided to do since then, which is to build a design system to try and solve some of these problems. That's the URL, govuk/design-system. And this is the team that works on it. This is us about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And this is us about a year ago now, hence the Christmas tree in the background. And we've varied in size as a team from between 5 and 12 people in the last year and a half. We're a mixture of designers, developers, writers, user researchers, data analysts, and product and delivery managers. I act as the product manager for the design system. And so I just want to clarify everything I show today, all the ideas and all the work, none of it's mine really, it's all these people's, and it's our users, and it's the people who contribute to the design system. So I'm kind of here to represent them. And we kind of describe the design system as a single thing, but actually it's really 3 different products. So we have the design system website where you get all the guidance and the code and the examples. We have a tool for designers to make prototypes called the prototype kit. And then we have the front-end framework that all of this stuff is actually built on top of, and that's called GovUK Front-End. So this is the design system website. This is the homepage there, and it's full of this kind of stuff. Headers, footers, headings, typographic styles, color palettes, form controls, all of that kind of stuff that you would expect to find in a design system. And then on top of that, we layer kind of guidance on how to bring all that stuff together into common types of page. So for example, question pages are a very common type of thing that you would find in a transaction on GovUK. Everything has guidance and coded examples. We have higher level patterns as well. So this is a design pattern for helping users understand whether they should use your service at all. Failure demand is a big source of costs within government, so trying to get people to understand whether they should try to use a service is a great way of saving money and their time as well. We also give guidance on how to ask for common types of information. Loads and loads of government services are asking for the same things over and over again, so we try and standardize the approach and give people good guidance on how to and when to ask for certain types of information. And as I said, all the examples in the design system are live coded ones, and you can copy the HTML or use this other templating language we use called Nunjux, and paste that into your prototype or into your live service. And that's all built on top of the framework I described earlier, GovUK Front-End. So as I said, yeah, everything can be pasted into the prototype kit or into your production front-end from the design system, and then you can start to tweak it and use it how you want. Finally, we have a kind of collaboration space that we use GitHub to host. So this is we call this the community backlog, and this is where all the components and patterns that we haven't yet built and haven't yet published can be discussed by the whole design and development community in the UK government. People can share work, ask questions, and at some point they might decide that they're ready to make a contribution for that thing, and then we have a process designed to handle that. So that is the design system. Like I said, we launched it into public beta last July on the 21st, and since then we've been doing the hard work to kind of drive adoption, support users and contributors. So who's been using it since then? We did some analysis a couple of weeks ago actually, and we've got about 36 different departments at the moment who are using GovUK Front-End. We went on to GitHub and just trawled GitHub looking for people using our code. 36 different departments, 5 local authorities, and there are about 1,000 repos on GitHub right now that use GovUK Front-End. About half of those are prototypes and the other half are production front-ends. It's quite hard to tell actually what that means in terms of number of sub-services, because one code repository could be in use by 10 services and one service might be made up of 10 repos. You can't really do the maths that way. We've had a few other governments fork our work as well, including the New Zealand government, who took our code and our guidance and used it as the basis for theirs. And closer to home, I don't know if he's in the room or not, Johan, who works for, is it Fix in Amsterdam, cloned the design system a couple of months ago to create a proof of concept for a Dutch equivalent. So I need to catch up with him and find out how that's gone. So altogether, from looking at the repos on GitHub, we know that the design system is currently being used to help people do all of these things. So everything from applying for legal aid to booking your driving test to getting divorced. That last one isn't real. Applied for a juggling license. So we train people to use our prototype kit every month, and we get them to build a fake service. So consequently, GitHub is full of these juggling license prototypes. So they pop up every now and then. As well as people using the design system, we've had lots of people contributing to it as well. So we've had about 250 pull requests from outside of the team to one of our 3 repos. And of the 16 new components and patterns that we've published in the last year and a half since we went live, about 12 of those were made by somebody outside the team, somebody from another team in the UK government. So we've got lots of people using it and lots of people contributing to it. But what's it actually like to run this thing? So we've been doing this for about a year and a half now, and maybe you've seen this, I don't know, but I think one of the main things that we've learned is that running a design system can feel a little bit like this. This is life as an open source maintainer. So on any given day, the team you saw the photo of us earlier, we can be doing any one of a number of things. We can be responding to queries on one of our support channels. We have 3 Slack channels, we have 3 repos, we have an email address, we have people coming, approaching us at our desks. We get about 100 support tickets a month, and they can take anything from like a few minutes to a few days to resolve. We can be triaging and prioritizing issues and pull requests. So that's issues that we've raised ourselves as a team, but also issues that have been raised by any one of the thousands of people using the service anymore. We might be supporting higher level contributions, like people contributing whole new patterns and components. One of the things we've definitely learned is that facilitating and supporting contributions of that kind takes a lot of effort and energy. It's not free work. It doesn't help you scale radically, maybe a little bit, but actually it takes a lot of effort to help people do this stuff for you. The benefits are elsewhere. The benefits really are about kind of encouraging adoption and getting a better representation rather than being able to scale really quickly. We also spend a lot of time training people to use our tools. So the prototype kit, we do about a day's worth of training every month for about 30 people every month. And also a lot of engagement. We do a lot of engagement with departments to try and get them to adopt our tools. And we do a fair amount of engagement internally within GDS as well to try and get us to continue to support these things. So if we're lucky, we might also get to work on a new component or a pattern ourselves, or maybe a new feature. But all of this work comes first once you're kind of once you're running the thing. So we think we spend about 40% of our time as a team supporting users now. So you can imagine that shift from building the thing to running the thing it's really changed the nature of the work of the team. We have a daily support rota. Somebody on the team is on support each day. If they can't answer a question themselves, they'll find someone else on the team who can. In a word, perhaps it's quite grindy compared to building and launching a thing. It's the real lived work of like running a live service. And at the same time, you don't have that grand unifying goal that you're building a thing to launch it on a particular date or in a particular month anymore. And so you lose maybe some of the coherence and the cohesion that you had as a team in that first phase. Also, once you open yourself up to people raising issues and pull requests and feature requests and bug reports from outside, again, it gets hard to kind of control the direction that the team is going in. And you can, again, lose a sense of coherence. This is something I think that we've all felt in that transition from building the thing to running the thing. So I'm going to talk a bit about some of the things we've tried to do to take the edge off that experience and to manage the support burden a bit so that we can focus on feature development and prioritizing some of the stuff we know that people really need. I'm not claiming that any of these things are the only way to address these problems, or indeed that we've found all the ways, and it'd be interesting to talk to you at the end of this about things that you may have done or are considering doing. But yeah, I'm going to go through maybe 4 or 5 things that we've done in the last year and a half to try and address some of those issues. So the first thing, one of the first things we did this in January this year, was move all of our work into one place. So before we launched the design system, we managed the work of the team in Trello. We didn't try anything more complicated than that. It's a smallish team. It's a relatively simple project, and Trello was fine for that. Up until the day that we went live, and then all of a sudden we started to get external pull requests and people raising issues. And so in any given sprint, we had the work of the team over here in Trello, and then we had all of these external requests over here in GitHub, because that's where we manage all our code. And what we were finding is that we were just jumping between these 2 platforms. We weren't able to really prioritize across those 2 different worlds, and so we were neglecting one or the other of them in any given sprint. We were focusing on the team's work to the detriment of anything external, or vice versa. And we knew we had this problem, but we were a bit scared to kind of try and move everything. But in the end, we did. We waited until like the first week in January, where things are typically pretty quiet, and then we just moved everything over from Trello to GitHub. GitHub has some more recent features like project boards and so on, which means that it can act quite a lot like Trello. And so, yeah, we moved all of our sprint boards and our roadmap boards over to Trello, and now everything is managed in one place, and you can see people's pull requests and their issues alongside our own work as well. And that means we can much more easily prioritize things. So the way that we tend to do that is we have a weekly triage session. It's a fairly low energy meeting. As you can imagine, it's about an hour long each week. And we just go through all the new issues that have been raised by either people in the team or people outside of the team in the community. And we size them based on how much effort we think they are. And we give them an importance. And we use labels in GitHub to do that. And then we look to see if there are any upcoming epics or missions or sprints that we know about that are kind of thematically related to that work, and we try and kind of put them in sequence that way. What else have we done? Okay, so I mentioned earlier the community backlog. I think I've got a picture of that. No. So the community backlog is the list of components and patterns that we haven't yet built, but that we know that people need, and it's a place where people can kind of discuss that work and share their examples of that work in advance. We also have a working group, which is a group of about 12 designers and developers from lots of different departments, and they get together once a month and they help us assure new components and patterns. And we use them as a kind of representative of our users in different departments. And so we worked with the working group to prioritize that list of components and patterns. And again, that gives us a sense of what the next most important thing to work on is. So next year we're going to try a bit more of a targeted approach to contribution, where instead of just accepting contributions from anybody about anything that's on the list, we actually proactively go out to the community and we say, okay, for the next 3 months we're going to focus on these 3 things. So if you've got anything that's relevant to those things, please submit it now, and hopefully that's going to keep things a bit more targeted and a bit more on track, and we can make sure that we're always working on the next most important things. So those are some of the ways that we are trying to kind of reduce the support burden. The first thing was to get everything into one place so we can actually compare things and prioritize them properly. One of the other things we've done, and this is just kind of good agile practice really, is to group our work into themed epics and missions. So as I said before, when new issues get raised or new pull requests get raised, one of the things we do is try to identify other similar stories or pieces of work and group them into epics that are themed. And what that does is it brings back a bit of the coherence that we'd lost. So when we were building the thing, we could sequence the work and everything kind of had a clear goal, and the ultimate goal was to launch the thing. Once you're running it, it becomes much more of a kind of a treadmill, and obviously people are making suggestions all the time, and their suggestions are not thematically related to each other. It just happens to be what people need at a given time. That, we discovered, makes for a very unsatisfying working week because the team is fragmented. Different people are working on entirely unrelated things, and they stop working with each other. Everybody kind of goes into their little silos. And so what we decided to do is to group these pieces of work into thematically related stuff. And what that does is it encourages the people on the team to work together again because they're all working on similar stuff. And it just gives a kind of shape to the week. So that's what we've been trying. I think it's been partially successful. One of the downsides of that way of working is that if you prioritize the thematic relationship, you sometimes have to deprioritize how important each individual thing is. There might be something which is more important than something else, but because it's thematically related, you're going to do it first. And we figure that we lose a bit of efficiency that way, but we get it back because the team is working in a bit more of a cohesive way. And it's just better for the team's kind of mental health, I think, to have these themes that kind of span the sprint. And we do that for sprints, and we also do it for missions. So GDS in general works in quarters, 3-month chunks, and so we might have a 3-month mission for an entire quarter that's related to a specific thing. We did this recently. So in the summer, we had a 3-month mission relating to accessibility. So this was to make sure that everything in GovUK Frontend meets the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 Level AA, which you may know is now, in the UK at least, it's part of legislation that all new public services have to meet the standard. So this was a really nice, satisfying thing to work on. Everybody could get behind it, and for 3 months we prioritized all of that work, and at the end of those 3 months we did a big new release of GovUK Frontend, and this kind of brought back some of that satisfaction that we got in the first phase of the team when we were building the design system itself. So yeah, grouping work by theme is useful. The third thing and again, this is kind of obvious, is that you need to design and document all of your processes. We have 3 products, but we think of the whole thing as being a service, and services need designing, and they need service design, and then you need to document all of that stuff. So we were really lucky. We had a really good service designer, Ignacia, who's somewhere in this building right now, and a really good content designer, Amy, and they worked together with us, with the team, and with our users. And they Ignacia spent about a year working on every aspect of the service. So that includes how to support users, how to do triage, how to facilitate good contributions, how to kind of nurture and develop the community around the products, and how to help people share work with each other. And together they documented all of that stuff and published that, and that has really helped us in many ways. So for example, we have copious documentation on how to actually do the daily work of supporting our products, and that means that if you're on the team, support becomes a lot easier. You can refer to the documentation whenever you need to, but also team members change, and when somebody new joins the team, they have this onboarding document that they can immediately get up to speed with. So we document all our internal processes, but we also document the external processes as well. So if you want to make a contribution to the design system, we've got lots of documentation to explain how you can do that. We have criteria that the contributions need to meet, which we've published. And so that kind of sets people's expectations. It helps contributors know what to expect and what standards to meet. And that means we don't need to spend as much time supporting them or like helping them to redo work, because we've given that information up front. So yeah, designing and documenting your processes has been a thing that's really helped us over the last few months. The next thing is this one: invest in your stakeholders. So this is one of the hard ones. Maybe we'll talk about this later on. I think this is a thing that I didn't think about as much as I should have done. So just because you've convinced your organization to let you build the design system doesn't mean that you can stop there. It doesn't mean that you've kind of won that funding battle. In fact, I think what we've realized is once you've launched the thing and it's out there, you're particularly vulnerable, because there's maybe a misconception that once the thing is out there, it's just a website and a code library, and why would it need a big team to kind of continue to support that stuff? I think sadly many organizations don't appreciate the value of design systems, but more importantly, they don't appreciate what it takes to run one. Hopefully what I'm showing you today is like, it takes a lot to run one of these things well. I mean, it doesn't take much to stick something out there and hope that people use it, but to actually facilitate good usage and support the users takes a lot of work. So you need to keep engaging with your stakeholders, particularly your internal stakeholders. We did a lot of external stakeholder engagement in the first phase of development, went out to departments, we got lots of support, helped them adopt them. We probably didn't do as much internally within GDS. I think we thought that we'd kind of had that conversation and won that battle, but I think that's not true. You have to kind of continue to do that. You've got to keep reporting on your successes. And I think you've got to not only explain what the cost savings and the benefits to your users are, but you've got to communicate what it takes, to support one of these things. Finally, as well as investing in your stakeholders, so all the stakeholder management in the world can't mitigate against something eventually coming along and reprioritizing things within your organization. Design systems need to be resilient. They're designed to last a long time, and so if something's going to last a long time in a large organization, it needs to be able to kind of weather the storms of like budgets and so on. So sooner or later something is going to happen, and it happened to us earlier in the year. I won't mention the name of the thing, you can probably guess what it was, but for about 2 weeks, so we'd lost a couple of team members to go and work on this other thing over the year, and then for a 2-week period the entire team had to pivot and work on an entirely unrelated thing for 2 weeks, and so we were unable to support our users at all for that time. And this is where we were really grateful that we had invested in our community, because people were able to, first of all, a lot of goodwill had been built up in our community over the previous year, because we'd given people a good level of service, so they understood the situation that we were in. Because we'd invested in the community, because we documented all our processes, because we created these open support channels, actually people were able to move into those and support each other for 2 weeks, and so we got through it, and everything was fine in the end. So yes, like I say, the community members understood our situation, and some of them at least were able to step in and help support the rest. And by investing in our community, I mean lots of different things. I think everything that we've done has had some kind of beneficial effect. I'll talk about some of the things we've done in the last year. So I've talked about the working group. Yeah, so we have a working group of representatives from different departments. They assure all the components and patterns. So this is putting the decision-making power into the community itself rather than it just being a thing that GDS does. They get to decide when something's ready or not to go into the design system. We also ask that same group to help us prioritize the backlog, so they get to affect the kind of the roadmap that we've got as well. We also invite comments on any big architectural decisions that we're going to make to GovUK Front-End in particular, and we publish our roadmap on our sprint board. So we try and do as much in the open as possible. We do user research regularly with colleagues, essentially. So most quarters we'll do a fairly big round of user research to various aspects of the service. We host workshops and facilitate those. We're doing one in a couple of weeks. Every Friday we have a Google Hangout for other people in the UK government who are making design resources, and that's become like a really regular touch point. There's no fixed agenda. It's very, very kind of casual and loose, but it's just a really nice kind of, gives a nice cadence to the work that we do, and it keeps us in touch with the people who are affected by the work that we do. We can share war stories and ideas and so on. So yeah, all of these things are kind of designed to foster the community, raise capability, and kind of help people help us. We do a lot of training, as I mentioned before, so we train people to use the prototype kit, and we've trained people how to use GitHub to raise issues and pull requests. So one of the things about GitHub, if you've used it, is it's a fairly intimidating tool at first glance. It looks like it's designed for developers, because it is. We didn't want developers to be the only kinds of people who could make contributions to the design system. There's a lot of guidance there that could be improved by good content design, for example. So one of the things we did about a year ago was start training content designers how to make simple pull requests and raise issues on GitHub, and that's really helped. Simple things can make a big difference, so we did a bit of research into how to make our support spaces more inclusive. We realized that it's kind of unsurprising, but the number of people who make contributions and the kind of demographic of those people is smaller and less diverse than our user base and our community in general, and that we had to do something to kind of encourage more diverse contributions. And we've done a few things, but one of the simplest things we've done is just to introduce ourselves on our Slack channels at the beginning of every day. So whoever's on support introduces themselves, and they let people know that they can DM them if they don't want to ask a question in public. And just these small little things got lots of really positive feedback, because you suddenly appreciate that those spaces, even if they're basically friendly spaces, they can still be intimidating spaces for people who aren't perhaps so familiar with the tools. Other things we've done, we've worked with the heads of design in the other departments in the UK, and we've kind of collectively agreed that making a contribution to the design system is a performance objective, like a legitimate performance objective. If you're working in any department in the UK and you're looking for something to kind of stretch yourself that year, you can suggest that I want to make a contribution, I want to make a new pattern or something, and we've all agreed that is a thing. So, in summary, what we mean by investing in communities, we want to encourage people's contributions, and we want to involve them in decision making, and we want to talk to them on a regular basis through workshops, research, and so on. And the idea is that by doing all of this stuff and all the stuff that I've mentioned before, we can kind of make a more resilient design system, one that's easier to run, one that's more satisfying to run, one that can weather the storms of large organizations. And one that can be sustainably run and maintained by the community when necessary. So that has been our experience of running a design system for about a year and a half now. Bedankt, I don't know if I said that correctly. And does anyone have any questions?